Dae-yun stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his hands clasped behind his back. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate hundreds of species from across the galaxy. Crystalline walls stretched upward into darkness, and holographic displays floated everywhere, showing star maps and trade routes. He had stood here many times over the past 15 years, always polite, always professional. Today would be different. The council members sat in their elevated seats, looking down at the floor where Dae-yun waited. Most of them were not paying attention. Some were reading reports on their personal devices. Others were talking among themselves. Counselor Vithurin, a tall creature with purple skin and 4 arms, was laughing at something his assistant had said. None of them seemed to care that they had called this emergency session. "The Human Prosperity Act has passed," announced Grand Counselor Threxus from his central throne. His voice echoed through the chamber. "All species must contribute to galactic stability according to their natural capabilities. Humans have shown exceptional skill in maintenance and technical services. Therefore, all human citizens will be required to serve in infrastructure roles for a minimum of 30 years. Compensation will be adjusted to reflect service caste standards." Dae-yun felt something cold settle in his chest. Service caste? They were calling humans service caste now. For 127 years, humanity had worked alongside the other species. They had fixed the broken stations when no one else could. They had kept the jump gates running through solar storms. They had crawled through toxic environments to repair communication arrays. And this was their reward. "Do you accept these terms?" Threxus asked, barely looking at Dae-yun. Dae-yun took a slow breath. He thought about Myra, who had spent 6 months in zero gravity fixing the quantum core at Gateway Station Primus. He thought about Hyunwoo, who had lost 3 fingers repairing a military vessel the Council had refused to shut down for proper maintenance. He thought about every human engineer, every technician, every worker who had given everything to hold this civilization together. "We are done," Dae-yun said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Threxus looked up from his datapad, his multiple eyes blinking in confusion. "What did you say?" "Humanity resigns from the Galactic Council effective immediately," Dae-yun said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "We are done." Vithurin laughed. "You cannot resign. You signed the Unity Accords. The Unity Accords guarantee equal treatment and fair compensation," Dae-yun replied. "You have violated those terms. The agreement is void. We are leaving." He turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, the council members began shouting, but Dae-yun did not stop. He had already said everything that needed to be said. 3 hours later, Dae-yun sent a single message to every human in council space. It contained 2 words: "Come home." Myra received the message while she was deep in the maintenance tunnels of Gateway Station Primus. She was covered in grease and her back ached from crawling through tight spaces. She read the message twice, then looked at Jinwoo, her apprentice, who was holding a plasma torch. "Pack your tools," she said. "What?" "We are not finished with the quantum regulators," Jinwoo replied. "Yes, we are," Myra said. She began gathering her equipment. "Set everything to autonomous mode. 90-day timer. After that, they are on their own." Jinwoo stared at her. "You are serious." "Very serious," Myra said. "We are going home." Across the galaxy, the same scene repeated itself thousands of times. Human engineers stopped their work, packed their belongings, and began heading toward the nearest human transport. They did not protest. They did not argue. They simply left on the agricultural station orbiting Zentara Prime. Human technicians finished their shifts, then quietly submitted their resignations. On the medical research facility near the Valkyrie homeworld, human scientists backed up their research and deleted their access codes. On the massive shipyards of the Outer Rim, human construction workers powered down their equipment and walked away. Station Master Quillix noticed something was wrong on the 3rd day. He was a Zentaria, species known for their administrative skills. He managed Gateway Station Primus, one of the busiest stations in Council space. The station housed over 50,000 permanent residents and processed millions of travelers every year. Where are the maintenance crews? Quillix asked his assistant. They have not reported for duty, the assistant replied, checking his datapad. None of them. What do you mean, none of them? All 47 human engineers have submitted resignations. They left on transports yesterday. Quillix felt a spike of panic. All of them. Get me someone from another species. We need those quantum regulators calibrated or the jump gate will drift out of alignment. His assistant looked uncomfortable. Sir, I have contacted every engineering firm in this sector. None of them have personnel trained on human-designed systems. Then find someone who can learn, Quillix snapped, but that was the problem, he would soon discover. The systems were not just maintained by humans. They were designed by humans, built by humans, and optimized by humans. The documentation existed, but it was incomplete. Much of the knowledge lived only in the minds of the engineers who had worked with the systems for years. Captain Yunwu stood on the bridge of the transport ship Serenity, watching the viewport as thousands of human vessels gathered at the designated coordinates. They had come from every corner of Council space, from the core worlds to the frontier stations. Families, engineers, doctors, teachers, artists. Every human who had been working in Council space was coming home. How many ships? Yunwu asked his navigation officer. 12,417, sir. More are arriving every hour. Yunwu nodded slowly. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled. Not for war. Not for conquest. Just to leave. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Council, the communications officer said. They are demanding we return to our posts. They say we are violating our contracts. Ignore it, Yunwu said. Set course for the border. All ships jump on my mark. Dae-yun stood beside him, looking out at the fleet. Do you think they understand yet? He asked. No, Yunwu replied. But they will. Myra joined them on the bridge, wiping her hands on a rag. She had just finished programming the final timer on the station's autonomous systems. 90 days, she said. After that, everything starts shutting down. Life support, environmental controls, waste management, power distribution, everything. Will anyone die? Dae-yun asked. Not if they are smart, Myra said. The systems will give them plenty of warning. They will have time to evacuate. But the stations will be dead. Dae-yun looked out at the stars. He thought about the council chamber, about Vethran's laughter, about Threxus barely looking up from his datapad. They had treated humans like machines, like tools to be used and discarded. Now they would learn what happened when the tools walked away. All ships report ready, sir, the navigation officer said. Hyenwu took a breath. Jump! The fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving council space behind. In the void where they had been, space was empty and silent. The backbone of galactic civilization had just walked away, and no one had even noticed yet. That would change soon. Station Master Quillix stared at the temperature readings on his display and felt his blood run cold. Gateway Station Primus was home to 50,000 people, and the environmental systems were failing. The temperature in the eastern habitat ring had dropped 3 degrees in the past hour. In the western ring, it had risen by 4 degrees. Get me an engineering team now, Quillix said into his communicator. Sir, we have contracted a Velkari engineering firm, his assistant replied. They are on their way. How long? 6 hours. 6 hours. Quillix looked at the temperature readings again. At this rate, people would start getting sick before the engineers even arrived. He pulled up the maintenance logs, hoping to find some clue about what was going wrong. The logs were there, written in standard galactic script, but they made no sense. Technical terms he had never seen before. Reference numbers that led to other reference numbers. Notes that said things like see Zhenwu's personal files or calibration adjusted based on experience. The Velkari engineering team arrived exactly 6 hours later. They were professionals, highly trained, with excellent credentials. Their team leader, a serious female named Corinth, studied the environmental control system for 20 minutes before she spoke. This is human design, she said. Yes, Quillix replied. Can you fix it? I do not know. The system architecture is unlike anything I have studied. See here? She pointed at a complex diagram on her datapad. This routing system makes no logical sense according to standard engineering principles. Yet clearly it works, or it did work, so what do we do? Corinth was silent for a moment. We can try to restore it to default parameters, but I cannot guarantee this will work. Human systems are built with many redundancies and adaptive algorithms. Without understanding the underlying logic, we are just guessing. They tried for 8 hours. The temperature fluctuations got worse. People began evacuating the affected sections of the station. Quillix authorized emergency heating and cooling units, but those were just temporary solutions. The real problem was deeper. In the core systems that humans had built and maintained, across council space, similar problems were emerging. On the industrial world of Calvex, water purification systems began producing contaminated water. On the trade hub of Nexus Station, communication arrays developed static that made long-range transmissions nearly impossible. On the military fortress Sentinel Prime, weapons targeting systems started drifting out of calibration. Each problem was small at first, annoying but not catastrophic. Station managers and planetary governors hired new engineering firms. They offered competitive pay. They promised quick solutions. But the engineers from other species kept running into the same wall. They did not understand human systems. Counselor Vithrin sat in his office, reading reports from across council space. 40% of all stations were experiencing technical difficulties. Jump gate delays were now averaging 4 hours instead of minutes. 3 planets had reported power grid failures. The reports kept coming, each one worse than the last. This is unacceptable, Vethrin said to his assistant. Contact the Human Diplomatic Office. Tell them we are willing to negotiate their return. Sir, there is no Human Diplomatic Office anymore. They closed it when they left. Then find their fleet. Send them a message. The message was sent. It was professional, polite even. It acknowledged that perhaps the Human Prosperity Act had been too harsh. It offered to discuss revised terms. It promised better compensation and improved working conditions. The message was never answered. On the medical station Mercy's Light, the crisis became real. The station housed 4,000 patients, many of them in critical condition. The life support systems began failing on day 32 after the human departure. First, oxygen levels dropped in 3 wards. Then, temperature control stopped working in the intensive care unit. The backup systems kicked in automatically, but those were only designed to last 48 hours. The station director, an elderly Zentari named Olmuth, made the hardest decision of his life. Evacuate all patients, he ordered. Priority to critical cases? We have 2 days to get everyone off this station. The evacuation was chaos. Ships arrived from nearby systems to help, but moving 4,000 patients was not simple. Many were too sick to be moved safely. Others required specialized equipment that did not exist on the transport ships. In the end, most patients survived, but 247 did not make it. They died during transport or from complications caused by the rushed evacuation, the Galactic News. Networks covered the tragedy extensively. Images of sick patients being carried onto crowded transport ships spread across every planet in council space. The public was shocked. Many had not even noticed that humans had left. Now they were seeing the consequences. Grand Counselor Threxus called an emergency session. The chamber was full this time. Every council member was present, and they were paying attention. We must address this crisis, Threxus said. His voice, usually so confident, now carried an edge of fear. The human departure has created unforeseen complications. We need solutions? Solutions? Vethrin spoke up from his seat. The solution is simple. We force them to return. Send a military fleet to their colonies. Bring back their engineers. Several council members nodded in agreement. Others looked uncertain. Can we do that legally? Asked a counselor from the Nerethi delegation. They violated their contracts by leaving, Vethrin insisted. We have every right to enforce those contracts. Threxus looked tired. He had been alive for 200 years and had led the council for 50 of them. He had seen wars, plagues, and economic collapses, but he had never seen anything like this. An entire species simply walked away and civilization began crumbling. Before we consider military action, Threxus said slowly, let us try diplomacy again. Offer them anything they want. Higher pay, better conditions, representation on the council. Whatever it takes. Another message was sent. This one was more desperate. It acknowledged mistakes. It promised reforms. It offered full citizenship rights and equal representation. It practically begged humans to come back. Again. There was no answer. Jinwoo sat in a small apartment on New Seoul, the primary human colony outside council space. He was watching the galactic news with his partner, Yoonji. The news showed footage of the evacuation from Mercy's Light. It showed angry citizens protesting outside council headquarters. It showed engineers from a dozen species trying and failing to repair basic systems. Do you feel bad? Yoonji asked. Jinwoo thought about it. He remembered the countless hours he had spent in maintenance tunnels. He remembered the station masters who treated him like furniture, who never said thank you, who complained when repairs took too long. He remembered the time he suggested a safety improvement and was told that humans should focus on fixing things, not thinking about them. No, he said finally. I do not feel bad. On Gateway Station Primus, Quillix finally managed to stabilize the environmental systems. It took 40 days, 6 different engineering firms, and more money than he wanted to think about. The temperature was steady again, and people were returning to their homes. But Quillix knew this was just a temporary fix. The Valkyrie engineers had told him honestly they had gotten the system working, but they did not really understand how. When it broke again, and it would break again, they might not be able to fix it. Quillix pulled up the human maintenance logs one more time. He found a note written by someone named Myra. It was dated 2 months before the humans left. The note said, Quantum regulator calibration requires experienced judgment. Cannot be automated. Regular human oversight essential for station safety. He had ignored that warning. They all had. Now he understood what it meant. The systems were not just machines that followed programming. They required intuition, experience, and knowledge that only came from years of working with them. The humans had not just maintained the infrastructure. They had understood it in a way no one else did, and now they were gone. Quillix looked at the calendar. 58 days since the humans left. He wondered how much time they had before the next crisis hit. He suspected it would not be long. Day 90 arrived like any other day. Station Master Quillix was reviewing supply requisitions when his entire display went dark. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing his office in red. Alarms began blaring throughout Gateway Station Primus. All systems report, Quillix said into his communicator. Trying to keep his voice steady, the responses came in rapid succession, each one worse than the last. Life support was failing. Power distribution was offline. Water purification had stopped. The jump gate control systems were dead. Environmental controls had crashed completely. Every single automated system that humans had maintained was shutting down simultaneously. How is this possible? Quillix shouted. We just fixed these systems. His chief engineer, the Valkyrie named Corinth, appeared on his screen. Her face was pale. The timers, she said. They set timers before they left. I found the code. 90 days from their departure, all autonomous systems were programmed to shut down. Quillix felt like he had been punched in the stomach. 90 days. Myra and her team had known exactly what they were doing when they left. They had given the council 90 days to figure things out. Now time was up? Can you override it? Quillix asked. I am trying, Corinth replied. But the shutdown protocols are deep in the core systems. Whoever programmed this knew exactly what they were doing. It will take hours, maybe days, to restore functionality. And sir, this is not just happening here. I am receiving reports from across the network. Every station, every gate, every facility with human-built systems is experiencing the same shutdown. Across Council space, chaos erupted. On the industrial world of Calvex, every factory went dark. Power plants shut down. Billions of people were suddenly without electricity. On the medical station Harmony, already struggling after the previous crisis, life support failed completely. This time there was no 48-hour buffer. The station had to be evacuated immediately on the agricultural planet Zentara. The automated farming systems stopped working. Irrigation systems shut down. Climate control facilities went offline. Crop monitoring networks crashed. Millions of acres of food crops would die within days without intervention. The jump gates were the worst problem. There were 147 major jump gates connecting Council space. They allowed ships to travel between star systems in minutes instead of years. Without them, interstellar civilization was impossible. When the gates shut down, over 7,000 ships were stranded mid-route. Stuck in deep space between systems. Grand Counselor Threxus sat in his private chambers, watching the reports flood in. The numbers were overwhelming. 200 dead within the first hour. 2,000 by the end of the first day. 20,000 by the end of the first week. And those were just the confirmed casualties. The real number was probably much higher. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, Commander Yelkoth requests an immediate meeting." "Send him in." Commander Yelkoth was a military officer from the Draken species. Large reptilian beings known for their aggressive nature and tactical skill. He strode into the room with confidence that Threxus found almost offensive given the circumstances. "Grand Counselor, I have a solution to our problem," Yelkoth announced. "I am listening." "We know where the human colonies are located. We send a military fleet. We bring back their engineers. By force if necessary." Threxus studied the commander for a long moment. "You want to invade human space?" "Not invade, retrieve. They are still technically Council citizens." "They have obligations." "They resigned." "We have no legal authority over them anymore." "Then we create authority," Yelkoth said impatiently. "Grand Counselor, thousands are dying every day. Millions more will die if we do not fix these systems. We do not have time for legal debates. We need those engineers back, and we need them now." Threxus was silent. He knew Yelkoth was wrong. He knew that using military force would make everything worse. But he also knew that Yelkoth was right about one thing. People were dying. The entire galactic civilization was collapsing. They needed help desperately. "How large a fleet?" Threxus asked quietly. 50 warships. More than enough to overwhelm their defenses. "Humans are not warriors, sir." "They are engineers. They will surrender quickly when they see our force." "And if they do not surrender?" Yelkoth smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Then we remind them why the Draken lead the Council military." Threxus authorized the mission. He told himself he had no choice. He told himself this was necessary to save lives. Deep down he knew he was making a terrible mistake. The fleet assembled at the border of Council space. 50 warships, the largest military force the Council had deployed in 30 years. Commander Yelkoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror, feeling satisfied. This would be quick and easy. Humans were soft, civilized. They spent their time fixing machines, not fighting wars. They would see the fleet and immediately agree to negotiate. The fleet jumped into human space and immediately detected human vessels. Just 10 ships, small and unremarkable. Yelkoth almost laughed. Did they really think 10 ships could stand against 50 warships? "Open a channel," Yelkoth ordered. The view screen activated, showing a human male in a captain's uniform. He looked calm, almost bored. "This is Captain Hyunwoo of the Human Border Patrol. You have entered human sovereign space. Turn back. This is your only warning." Yelkoth smiled. "Captain, I am Commander Yelkoth of the Council Defense Force. Your species has obligations to the Council. You will provide us with engineering personnel to address the current crisis, or we will take them by force." "Stand down." "No," Hyunwoo said simply. "Excuse me?" We are not going back. Turn your fleet around and leave. Yelkoth's smile disappeared. Captain, you are outnumbered 5-1. Do not be foolish. We are not counting ships, Commander, Yunwu replied, his voice still calm. We are counting who knows how to keep yours running. Yelkoth felt a flicker of unease. What does that mean? It means you have 10 seconds to begin turning around. After that, I cannot guarantee your fleet's safety. Yelkoth's unease turned to anger. How dare this human threaten him? All ships, weapons online. Target their vessels. Prepare to fire. Nothing happened. I said weapons online, Yelkoth repeated. His tactical officer looked up, confusion and fear on his face. Sir, weapons are not responding. Shields are offline. Main engines are not responding to commands. What? Yelkoth turned to his engineering station. Explain this now. The engineer was frantically working at his console. Sir, something has taken control of our systems. All major functions have been locked out. We are dead in space. Yelkoth looked at the view screen. Yunwu was still there, still calm. What did you do? Yelkoth demanded. We built your ships, Commander, Yunwu explained patiently. We designed your weapon systems. We programmed your shield generators. We wrote the code that runs your engines. Did you really think we would not leave ourselves access? Across the fleet, the same scene was playing out on every ship. 50 warships, the pride of the Council military, floating helplessly in space. Weapons offline. Shields down. Engines dead. Not a single shot had been fired. They had been defeated without a battle. Yelkoth felt something he had not felt in decades, fear. What happens now? Now you have a choice? Yunwu said. You can drift here until your life support fails, or you can accept our tow back to Council space. Choose quickly. Grand Counselor Threxus watched the live feed from the Conqueror. He watched Yelkoth's humiliation. He watched 50 warships being towed back across the border like disabled cargo vessels. The entire Council was watching. The entire galaxy would soon know humans were not weak. They had never been weak. They had simply been patient, working quietly while everyone else took them for granted. Now the truth was obvious. Humans did not hold civilization together with muscle or weapons. They held it together with knowledge, skill, and the patient work of building and maintaining the systems everyone else relied on. Threxus received a message marked urgent. He opened it with shaking hands. It was from Captain Yunwu. You have 6 months before total infrastructure collapse. When you are ready to negotiate as equals, not as employers, contact us. Until then, you are on your own. Threxus looked at the data displays showing Council space. Red warnings everywhere. Critical systems failing. Death tolls rising. The greatest civilization in the galaxy was dying, and the only people who could save it had just humiliated the Council's military without firing a single shot. He finally understood. They had built the cage they now found themselves in, bar by bar, system by system, taking for granted the humans who held everything together. Now the humans were outside the cage, watching them suffer the consequences. De Yun stood in the Council chamber on New Sol, humanity's primary colony. This chamber was much smaller than the Grand Hall on the Council homeworld, but it felt more real. The walls were simple metal, the chairs were functional, and everyone present was actually paying attention. They want to talk, Myra said, holding up a datapad showing the latest message from Grand Counselor Threxus. He is offering full reparations, equal representation, and formal apologies. What about the people who died? Asked Jinwu. He had been quiet through most of the meeting, but now his voice was hard. Do they mention the 200 patients on Mercy's Light? The 20,000 who died in the Cascade failures? Do they apologize for those? The message mentions regret for loss of life, Myra replied carefully. Regret, Jinwu repeated bitterly. They regret it? How generous. Hyunwoo leaned forward. The question is not whether we accept their apology. The question is whether we help them at all. They enslaved us, called us service caste, and tried to invade our space. Why should we save them? The chamber fell silent. It was the question everyone was thinking, but few wanted to say out loud. Across human space, the debate was raging. Some argued that the council deserved to collapse. They had shown their true nature. Let them face the consequences. Others argued that innocent people were dying, people who had nothing to do with the council's decisions. Daeyeon finally spoke. I have spent 40 years in council space. I know their flaws better than anyone, but I also know that most of them are not evil. They are just comfortable. They took us for granted because we let them. We were so good at our jobs that they forgot we were even there. That is not an excuse, Jinwoo said. No, it is not, Daeyeon agreed. But it is an explanation. And if we let their civilization collapse completely, millions more will die, children, elderly, people who never voted for the Species Utility Act, people who never even thought about humans one way or another. Do they deserve to die for their leaders' mistakes? What do you suggest? Asked Yoonji, who had been listening quietly from her seat. We help them, Daeyeon said, but on our terms. We do not just fix their systems and return to the old way. We change everything. New agreements, new laws, new power structures. We make sure this never happens again, and if they refuse? Hyunwoo asked. Then we walk away again, Daeyeon said simply. But this time forever. The vote was close. In the end, humanity decided to offer assistance. But the terms they demanded were harsh, and they made it clear that these terms were not negotiable. Grand Counselor. Threxus received the human response 3 days later. He read it carefully, then read it again. His assistant stood nearby, waiting. They want Counselor Vethrin arrested and tried for crimes against sentient beings, Threxus said slowly. They want the Species Utility Act not just repealed but declared illegal. They want equal representation on the council with full voting rights. They want control over all infrastructure projects with no council oversight. They want 50 years of back pay for every human who worked in council space. Can we agree to those terms? His assistant asked nervously, Can we afford not to? Threxus replied. He looked at the latest casualty reports. The death toll was now over 2 million and rising every day. Entire planets were being evacuated. The economy had collapsed. Ships were stranded. Stations were dying. Send a message. We agree to all terms? Counselor Vethrin did not go quietly. When council security came to arrest him, he barricaded himself in his office and broadcasted a message to the entire galaxy. This is tyranny, Vethrin shouted, his forearms gesturing wildly. Humans are holding us hostage. They caused this crisis by leaving. Now they demand we bow to them? I will not accept this. The council should never negotiate with terrorists. His broadcast lasted exactly 4 minutes before his office power was cut and security broke down the door. Vethrin was taken away in restraints, still shouting about human tyranny. His trial would last 6 months and would result in his exile to a penal colony. Many in the council felt he got off too easy. The first human engineering teams arrived back in council space 60 days after the agreement was signed. They were led by Soyeon, a young engineer who had been born on Gateway Station Primus but raised on New Sol after the departure. She had never worked in council space before, but she had been trained by the best. Myra herself had spent 3 months teaching Soyeon everything she knew. Gateway Station Primus was their first stop. Station Master Quillix met them at the docking bay personally. He looked older than Soyeon remembered from the photos, worn down by months of crisis management. Thank you for coming, Quillix said. There was genuine relief in his voice. Soyeon nodded. Show me the environmental systems first. That is where we will start. The work was hard. Systems that had been running for 90 days on emergency patches and amateur fixes were a mess. Soyeon's team had to basically rebuild everything from scratch. But they knew what they were doing. They had been trained by the people who built these systems originally. Within a week, Gateway Station Primus had stable life support for the first time in 4 months. Quillix watched them work with something like awe. They moved efficiently, confidently. They did not need to check manuals every 5 minutes. They just knew. This was the difference, he realized. Other species could learn to fix human systems, but humans understood them on a deeper level. They had intuition that came from being the ones who designed and built everything in the first place. "I am sorry," Quillick said one day when Soyan was taking a break, "for how we treated your people. I did not understand." Soyan looked at him for a long moment. "No one did," she said finally. "That was the problem. You took us for granted. You thought fixing things was easy because we made it look easy. You never asked how hard we worked or what we gave up to keep everything running. Will you teach us?" Quillix asked. "Really teach us, I mean. Not just how to fix things, but how to understand them." "That is part of the agreement," Soyan replied. "Every human engineering team will train local personnel. It will take years, but eventually you will be able to maintain these systems yourself." "Why?" Quillix asked. "Why help us at all after everything we did?" Soyan thought about her grandmother, who had worked on this very station for 30 years. She thought about all the stories of humans who had given their best years to Council Space. "Because someone has to fix things," she said simply. "And someone has to teach people how to fix things. That is what we do. That is who we are. But this time you will respect us for it." Across Council Space, the same scene repeated itself. Human engineering teams arrived, assessed the damage, and began repairs. It was slow work. Some systems were too damaged and had to be completely replaced. Some planets had suffered irreversible harm. But slowly, steadily, civilization began functioning again. The jump gates came back online one by one. Power plants restarted. Water flowed again. Air became breathable. The stranded ships found their way home. The evacuated populations returned to their worlds. Life, difficult and changed, but still life, continued. Daeyeon attended the first council session under the new agreement. He sat in a chair that was level with all the other council members, not below them on the floor. Threxus opened the session with a formal statement. "We acknowledge our failures," Threxus said. "We took for granted the beings who held our civilization together. We learned a hard lesson. Humanity is not returning to us out of weakness or obligation. They are returning as equals, as partners. This council will never forget that lesson." There was applause, genuine and sustained. Daeyeon did not smile. He remembered the humiliation, the casual dismissal, the laughter. But he also saw something different in the council members' eyes now. Not fear, exactly, respect, understanding. They had learned what humanity was capable of, both in building and in walking away. "We have work to do," Daeyeon said when it was his turn to speak. "It will take years to repair the damage. It will take decades to rebuild trust. But if we work together, truly together, we can build something better than what existed before." As he left the chamber that day, Daeyeon thought about the journey that had brought him here. From standing on this floor as a supplicant to sitting as an equal. The price had been terrible. Millions had died. But perhaps, just perhaps, something good could come from it. Perhaps the galaxy would remember that civilization was not built by those who ruled from thrones, but by those who maintained it through quiet, dedicated work. 50 years later, Daeyeon stood in the newly rebuilt council chamber. His hair was completely white now and he walked with a cane. But his eyes were still sharp and his mind was still clear. Today was special. Today they were unveiling the memorial. The chamber was packed with representatives from every species in council space. Humans sat among them, not separate, not below, but integrated throughout. Young Velkari engineers sat next to their human mentors. Zentari administrators compared notes with human logistics specialists. Draken military officers discussed defensive strategies with human tacticians. It was normal now, this mixing of species as equals. Soyan approached him, now middle-aged herself and serving as the chief engineer of the entire council infrastructure network. "Are you ready?" she asked. "As ready as I will ever be," Daeyeon replied. They walked together to the center of the chamber, where a large cloth covered something tall. The room fell silent as Grand Counselor Marana, who had replaced Threxus 15 years ago, stepped forward to speak. 50 years ago? We nearly destroyed ourselves through arrogance and ignorance, Miranda said. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. We took for granted the beings who held our civilization together. We learned a lesson written in the blood of millions. Today, we ensure that lesson is never forgotten. She pulled the cloth away, revealing a statue. It showed a human engineer, a woman, kneeling with a toolbox open beside her. She was looking upward at the stars with an expression of quiet determination. The base of the statue was inscribed with words in every language spoken in council space, to those who built the bridge we walked upon. The chamber erupted in applause. Many were crying. The memorial had been 50 years in the making, designed by a Valkyrie artist who had worked closely with human advisors to get every detail right. The toolbox showed real tools. The expression on the engineer's face captured something essential about humanity: steady competence without arrogance, strength without aggression, dedication without complaint. After the ceremony, Dae-yun found himself standing alone in front of the statue. He thought about Myra, who had set those 90-day timers knowing exactly what would happen. She had died 20 years ago, peacefully in her sleep on New Sol. He thought about Hyunwoo, who had faced down 50 warships with just 10 vessels and one without firing a shot. Hyunwoo was retired now, teaching military strategy at the Council Defense Academy. He thought about Jinwoo, who had been so angry at the council but had eventually returned to work as an instructor, teaching young engineers from all species how to properly maintain life support systems. It is beautiful, is it not? Said a voice beside him. Dae-yun turned to see Station Master Quillix, now very old and walking with the aid of a hover chair. Yes, Dae-yun agreed. It is. I never thanked you properly, Quillix said. For coming back. For teaching us. For not letting us die. We came back because it was the right thing to do, Dae-yun replied. But we did not forget. We will never forget. Nor should you, Quillix said quietly. The younger generations need to hear the story. They need to understand how close we came to losing everything. Dae-yun nodded. The story was now taught in schools across council space. The departure, they called it. Or sometimes the great lesson. Children learned about it alongside mathematics and history. They learned about the Species Utility Act, about Counselor Vethran's arrogance, about the Cascade failures. They learned about the 2 million who died. And they learned about what happened when a society took its essential workers for granted. The changes had gone far beyond just giving humans equal representation. The council had fundamentally restructured how it valued labor. Engineers, technicians, maintenance workers from all species now received respect and compensation appropriate to their importance. Infrastructure management was no longer seen as low-status work. Young people from the most prestigious families competed for positions in engineering programs. Soyeon's own daughter, Hannah, was studying to become a civil engineer. She wanted to design station environmental systems. When Soyeon told Dae-yun this, he had smiled. 50 years ago, no parent would have wanted their child to go into maintenance work. Now, it was considered one of the most honorable professions, but not everything had changed smoothly. There had been resistance, particularly in the first decade. Some council members had chafed under the new agreements. Some had tried to slowly roll back human authority over infrastructure projects. Each time, humanity had responded calmly but firmly. Follow the agreement or we walk away again. They never had to walk away. The memory of the departure was too fresh, too terrifying. Council space had lost 2 million people in 6 months. Entire planets had been evacuated. The economy had collapsed. No one wanted to risk that again. So the agreements held. The jump gates were now maintained by mixed species crews, with humans serving as senior engineers but also training others. The same was true of every major installation across council space. Knowledge was no longer hoarded or kept in individual heads. It was documented, taught, and shared. Systems were designed with redundancy and with the understanding that multiple species might need to maintain them. Dae-yun attended a graduation ceremony at the Council Technical Institute. 200 students were graduating, representing 15 different species. They had all completed the 5-year program in Advanced Systems Engineering. The curriculum had been designed by human engineers but taught by instructors from many species. The graduates were competent, confident, and ready to keep civilization running. One of the graduates, a young Valkyrie named Sorath, approached Daeyeon after the ceremony. "I wanted to thank you, sir," Sorath said respectfully. "My great-grandmother was Corinth. She was the engineer who tried to fix Gateway Station Primus during the first crisis." Daeyeon remembered the name. Corinth had tried her best with limited knowledge and had managed to keep people alive. "Your great-grandmother was a good engineer," he said. "She did what she could with what she knew. She told me stories before she died," Sorath continued, "about how humiliated she felt, not understanding systems she should have understood. About how she realized humans had been carrying the entire galaxy on their backs and no one noticed. She made me promise to learn properly, to honor the engineers who came before." "She sounds like a wise woman," Daeyeon said. "She was," Sorath agreed. "She also said that humanity's greatest strength was not their technical skill. It was their willingness to walk away when they were not respected. She said every species should learn that lesson." Daeyeon smiled. "Your great-grandmother understood more than most." As the years passed, the younger generations began to see the old divisions as ancient history. Human children played with Valkyrie children, studied with Centaurea children, competed with Draken children. Mixed species engineering teams were normal. Mixed species families were becoming common. The council space was integrating in ways that would have been impossible before the departure, but the old generation remembered. They remembered the humiliation, the crisis, the deaths. They remembered what it felt like when civilization collapsed. And they made sure their children and grandchildren remembered. Daeyeon gave his final speech to the council on his 95th birthday. He was frail now, his voice weak, but everyone listened intently. "I have lived through the worst crisis our civilization has ever faced," he said slowly. "I have seen millions die because we were taken for granted. I have seen the strongest military in the galaxy disabled without a shot fired. I have seen what happens when those who maintain civilization walk away. But I have also seen recovery. I have seen change. I have seen a galaxy learn to value all its people, not just those who sit in high places." He paused, gathering his strength. "The lesson of the departure is simple. Civilization is not built by those who rule. It is built by those who work. The engineers, the technicians, the maintenance crews, the builders. These are the people who hold everything together. Disrespect them at your peril. Take them for granted and watch everything crumble. Treat them as equals and watch civilization flourish. We return not because we were weak, but because we chose mercy over vengeance. But never forget, we could walk away again. Any species could. The moment you start thinking some people are more important than others, the moment you start treating workers as tools instead of people, you plant the seeds of your own destruction." He looked around the chamber at the faces of every species, young and old. "Remember the departure. Remember the price of arrogance. And remember that the quietest voices in any society are often the ones holding everything together." Daeyeon died peacefully 3 months later, surrounded by family. His funeral was attended by representatives from every species in council space. Humans and non-humans alike mourned the passing of the man who had said 3 words that changed the galaxy. "We are done at the funeral," Soyeon spoke about her mentor. "Daeyeon taught us that true strength is not measured in weapons or wealth. It is measured in what you build and what you can walk away from. He taught us to value ourselves and to demand that others value us too. He taught us that walking away from disrespect is not weakness, but wisdom." The memorial statue in the council chamber became a place of pilgrimage. Young engineers from every species visited it before beginning their careers.